And then I look at what else do people do when they have the extreme desire to belong. They look for boyfriends, they look for girlfriends, they look for families to belong to. They have babies, they adopt children, they belong to congregations and churches or my God, there is like so many things that people do when they have the extreme desire to belong. They go get degrees, like, licenses and degrees in education. They go to school. They go get a job. But you have to get a job in order to survive. Yeah, you do. But usually people like to use their job as their place of belonging, their social capital. It's quite interesting. Hey, sugar. Hold on. Where's sugar? Where's sugar? Come on. What can I say? Come here. Want to come here? You want to go up? So, yeah. What do people do when they have the extreme desire to belong? They do a lot of things. They go and perfect themselves to fit the bill. They go get plastic surgery. They wear the right clothes. They give money to a person, place, or thing in hopes to buy their loyalty and whatever. They go on YouTube and talk about a specific article or a person, place, or thing. And there's no other way to belong when you all have a shared enemy, a shared savior, a shared way of relating to your symptoms. I mean, that's how insidious the extreme desire to belong is, when you're willing to forego your ethics and your morals, and then you start cannibalizing the people around you. That's the extreme desire to belong, is the cannibalization of humanity. And that is the crux of politics, religions, and science, and then all the different dogmatic lifestyles and belief systems. And so extricating yourself from that is like, oh my God, that will take layers and layers and layers and layers of healing physically. And many people can't even get through the physical layers of peeling back the programming, because the physical programming is so embedded. Come here, sugar. Come here. Come here. Shuggy, come here. The intellectual programming is also embedded, but physically you have to clear the pipes in order for your intellectual capacity to expand. Because when you have too much conflicting programming in your body, mind, and spirit, in your colon, in your brain, the foggy brain, all that stuff, there's no way you can expand your capacity or take on new information to even see that you are practicing these types of practices or have specific brainwashing. You don't realize that birthdays are brainwashing. I mean, that's one of the most insidious of it all, is everything starts as soon as you're born. The brainwashing is so pervasive. As soon as you're born, your first birthday, your second birthday, and then you go to school. Then your parents belong to associations. They have friends. They have family, extended family. And then, then the news. And then, oh my gosh. And, at some point you can survive without all those crazy associations. The innovators don't feel like they have to belong to a society that gives them validation. Innovation is where you're saying, I'm not needing validation from my peers. I'm going to develop everything on my fucking own, and I'll use the substantiated facts as the platform, because y'all have to come from facts, okay? From things that have already been discovered and proven. And then you start redeveloping something completely different. And then you don't need the validation from people in politics, people in your religion, or your scientific dogmas, or your family, your friends, your cliques, your associations. your investment groups. I mean, look at Facebook, all over Facebook. You know how many groups are on Facebook? That's how pervasive belonging to something is that everyone's looking for a group to belong to. And they're like, oh, thanks for the ad. Thanks for the ad. I want to belong to this group. I want to belong to that group. And it's like, when you belong to a group, what does that make you? Oh, now you feel a part of things. Now you feel like you're part of humanity. You feel connected. Why didn't you feel connected before? Because you weren't connected to yourself. If you have to belong to a group in order to feel connected, then again, you're cannibalizing somebody else so you can get ahead, or so that you can feel like you're somebody because somebody else accepted you. That right there was what I had to suffer through my whole friggin' life. And I suffered that through the military, through childhood, through school, through family, through people I was friends with, different groups I was part of. And you try to grow, and some people want to hold you back, or they think, oh, you're crazy for leaving, or you're stupid, or it's like, oh my God. And then that's what you realize, that's the foundation of all suffering, is the extreme desire to belong to something because you don't even belong to yourself. And 48 is integral because it is a milestone because of the self-awareness. Because again, I have hindsight. Absolutely, I have hindsight and I have foresight. Because when you recognize what happened yesterday, then you kind of see what's going to happen tomorrow with certain people. Not with myself. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow for me because it's like I don't live a predictable life. I'm doing my book. Do I know when it's going to come out? No, I don't. I know my husband, he does his thing and I'm doing my thing. And so, but what's predictable is that I keep myself alive. That's the only predictability, is I stay alive. And I'm not going to be run by needing validation from anybody. And so then you can start speaking your truth. Then when somebody is trying, like someone went on to John's page last night, John Oakes, because they were talking about silence. The toxic part of the world is when people don't speak out when they should. Like I said, when they came for the fat, but I didn't speak out because I wasn't obese. Then they came for this, and I didn't speak out because of this. I used salt, and I used sugar, and I used whatever. And then when they came for me, there was no one left to speak for me. And that's because everyone died from lack of fat, lack of salt, lack of sugar, right? So you see where I was going with that. And so then I'm like, okay. And so John posted something about silence. That's toxic. If you don't speak out about things that really matter, like seriously, that people have control over, not what you think they have control over, but what they actually have control over, and you don't speak out, then that's more toxic than speaking out on something that doesn't matter. So staying silent is also very toxic. You need to speak out on something that matters, right? And so this lady's like, oh gosh, that's because like she was thinking that that we were in her world, we were virtue signaling, which is coming from a very moral high ground. And no, we are exemplifying. This is how you have to look at it. We are exemplifying when we're on our page. And we're not going legislating morals on somebody else's page, telling them how they should be. We are exemplifying exactly what we want to see in this world. No, we're not shoving any of our ideas down anyone down's throat. Now, I've done that where I have gone on someone's page. And it's also because they're in the Jilly Juice world or on my page. And I've also been in contact with them as far as the JJ protocol. So part of me feels like I do have license to kind of redirect someone's energy if I feel they need to. Then they can block me and delete me if they don't want my energy. Fine. But she was just like, oh my gosh. And she said, well, pointing out people's failures is not really conducive to whatever. Like that was kind of the tone that was going on. And I'm just like, you don't need to defend these people. John is just basically exemplifying what he wants to see, not only in his world, but the world around him. And why are you coming on here trying to convert him? And so I really pinpointed the intent of the conversation. Okay. And so And so then you're very clear on people's intentions. You're very clear on what where their person is going, where they're coming from, and what they're trying to do. And then you're able to you're able to really just wrap up an argument, and you still come from logic. The other person's coming from flipping emotions, because then the person started deteriorating, and they started really cackling at me and doing all this other stuff. If you go on his page, you might see, if you kept the comments there, you'll see it. Because I was just like, bam, here, lob a grenade at me, I'll go in and neutralize it and lob back, a flower. Lob a grenade, I'll lob a flower. Lob a grenade, I'll lob a flower, with logic. And that's what will happen when you finally lose the intention for validation, lose the intention to feel like you have to measure up to all of your friends and family, and then you start seeing things for what they are, and then you can call people on their shit, and they're not gonna like it. No, she was deteriorating. She was getting pissy at me, and she at first she's like, I'm gonna get off here, I'm done, just talk to text, whatever. I'm like, okay. And then she started gaining steam because I was challenging her. And that's the thing, when you go on my page and you want to challenge me, all of you guys have every license to challenge anyone challenge me on my page. So when I go on John's page and John and I are aligned and someone's challenging him, fudge, yeah, I'm going to go and say, hey, he's just exemplifying his belief system. What's your intention on this page? She's like, oh gosh, disagreement, whatever. She said, I don't mean, there was a lot of things that was said, and I'm just like, it's not that, there's anything wrong with disagreement, but what's your intention going on his page? Because you're not going to convert him. It's not like you're a god that he's going to listen to you and be like, oh, you're absolutely right, Mrs. and Mrs. whoever. I'm going to change my viewpoints right now just because you came on my page and disagreed. And so then you start pinpointing people's intentions. And then you can totally just wrap up a conversation, call it for what it is, and then keep calling them on their shit. And then they get pissed and they don't know what the hell to do. And then you cut them off because they're going to cross the line somewhere. But that's what I'm saying, is that you become very adept at reading people, and what they say and what they don't say speaks fucking volumes. And then you start mitigating potential disaster situations because you nipped it at the bud before it became a major issue. I'm not always perfect at it, because someone last night tried to pretend to be somebody else when they were somebody else that I blocked, and I was under the spell of someone just worshiping me, and I'm trying to help them, and oh my god. And John's like, it's this person, hello. And I'm like, oh my god, yes. And so it's good that to have, not to have your blinders on, to always help somebody, because then you get caught up in trying to save someone and not see the indicators that someone actually is being deceptive. And so that's where I am short there. That I knew something in my back wasn't right, but I wasn't sure what it was. I didn't put my finger on it. And then I realized, oh shit, this person has the same exact speech and verbiage than the other person who's on a different profile. And so, okay, so that's the thing, is that you guys will start then pointing out the things that you missed when you were still under the influence of the brainwashing and needing validation. And so that's why I'm saying, okay, with the JJ mentality, at some point, you're not going to need the validation. At some point, you're not going to be part of those factions, those political dogmatic belief systems, the religious dogmas, the scientific dogmas. You're not going to take part in any of that stuff, because look at people over in Ottawa, over there in Canada. All those truckers are now stopping, like they are putting a crank in the supply chain of people are depending upon truckers to give them their food and whatever supplies. And now they're all out there rallying, causing a major thing. I know it's about the mandates, but it's not going to matter at this point. The system has caused people to think that getting something or not getting something is going to save them or harm them. And then that's what then creates the economy to explode, and then people not getting their needs met. And so then you realize that people have been gaslit for freaking years. They want to see people go out there and be out there rallying on the streets. The system wants to see people out there rioting and picketing and not going to work and not bringing the supplies to your store, because then it would be a self-induced situation. Because when you think about it, vector or no vector, we're in a pandemic. The virus is mutating. You either have it or you don't, as far as what it takes to deal with it. You're either going to respond to the viruses correctly, or you're going to find ways to stop the pain and not feel the evolution, and then die anyways. And so you might as well now realize that you have been gaslit. We have been gaslit for freaking years and centuries. And it's time now that we're not in a cured state, feeling nothing, that we face our suffering so we have some barometer to go by. But many of you are suffering, and you're not allowing that suffering to do something that's beneficial to you. Some of you are just suffering, and then you're going to die suffering. That's what happens in the medical holistic system, the religious system, the political system, is that people suffer and the suffering doesn't do shit for them. And then they take everyone around them with them. So if you're going to suffer, you might as well have it be suffering to your benefit, because you're going to suffer anyways. So why not have the suffering keep you alive and have you, create more awareness in your life than take everyone down with you? But the system doesn't work that way, because we're in a great reset. The Georgia Guidestones. Okay? You're asking to suffer, and you're asking to pass away and have somebody end the suffering for you in a very final way. Let me tell you, life is not about not suffering. Life is suffering. The degrees and the magnitude of suffering is very different. My suffering is definitely not as exponential as it was a couple years ago. When I was on the Dr. Phil show, I was suffering. When I was dealing with all the journalists, I was suffering. When I was getting attacked left and right, I was suffering. But I still faced it, and I still trudged on and dealt with it and found different ways to say the same thing. And I had an intention to survive it when everyone around me was trying to cannibalize the fuck out of me. But I still kept feeding my body, and getting stronger, dealing with the viruses, not getting caught up too much in the binary-driven arguments. And if I did, I would point it out, and then I would say, okay, but I would understand both sides of an argument. I would lay it out there, and I had no problem telling that to my friends and family. And bam, let me tell you, the awareness becomes astronomical. And then you start seeing stuff for what it really is, and then you take yourself out of the fucking war, because it's not your war. And you find ways to survive. Thank God I'm here in Ohio versus being over there in Canada, where the supply chains are going to be interrupted. I hope it doesn't happen here. If it does, I'll still find a way to survive. Even if it's just living off of top ramen and squirrels, whatever. I don't think I'll get to that point. But if it gets to that, then, humans have a way to survive through the toughest times. All right? But don't make the suffering work against you. And don't try to stop the suffering either. That's what's so amazing about the JJ protocol is, yes, you will suffer in the beginning because you have so many things that you do not want to deal with in the beginning. And now you have to deal with it, and you have to suffer through it. And you find ways to make it manageable so it's not completely taxing the hell out of you, but you still have to keep feeding your body to deal with the suffering. And then the suffering becomes less and less and less. And the more viruses you get exposed to, the more the suffering is going to be first really high for a minute, and then bam, done. I suffered during those hives on 22222, okay? And I just dealt with it. First, the pain of lactic acid building up in my shoulders from hitting all the ice with a broomstick. And then it was the hives. And I just sat through it, and I just gritted my teeth, and I just laughed and said, okay, whatever, I'll just deal with it. But I'll tell you, it was suffering. But it was short-lived. Now, some of you have put aside the suffering for such a long time that you have psoriasis, you have other issues, you've taken out your uterus or gotten a hysterectomy or whatever, and now you have to suffer growing it back. You have to suffer dealing with the psoriasis and the eczema that you have held back with medicine or other stuff. A friend of mine told me about, he took a drug for herpes, and when he got off the drug, the herpes came back. Well, that ought to tell you something, that drugs and all the different things that are out there on the market only hold back what is inevitable. Okay? It's not something you do 100% long term. Cures are only temporary. And when you don't do the cure anymore, then everything comes back tenfold. But even if you do stay on the cure, then there's antibiotic resistance, or the FDA pulls that drug from the market because the person's going to eventually have more exponential evolution that they can handle, and so that drug is not then appropriate for them. It gets pulled, gets recalled, and a new drug comes in and does the same thing over again. That's the whole drug market. The vector market, the same thing. Every single pharmaceutical and biotherapeutic all has the same intention, to hold back evolution. And when evolution finally says, okay, we got to now finally come calling and take in the loan, people again go bankrupt. So anyways, so yeah, that's all about suffering. Suffering is the pathway to evolution. That's the magic that people have been misdirected from. People don't know the magic of suffering until they actually face it. And when you face the suffering, I'm telling you, worlds will open up. But if you keep taking vectors, you keep taking remedies, even taking jelly juice, because you've already now gone through the catalyzing information, but you keep taking jelly juice to not feel the COVID, you will not understand where I'm coming from, because you're not suffering. Eventually you will earn a mostly pain-free lifestyle, and you won't suffer as much. And you still have to upgrade yourself to the level of the environment. So that's the suffering, is the evolution to adapt to new environments, new viruses, new people, new information, new situations. That's the magic, is staying with the suffering of the changes of the world, the economy, your society, your friends and family, shedding the things that are not serving you, bringing in things that do serve you. Realize that you have to deal with the COVID-19. It's not something you run away from. The fact that you have to cough it out versus trying to use the J juice all the time to get it out. I only took 2 shots of J juice for the 2 or 3 weeks that I had the respiratory infection last year. And the rest, I coughed it out. In the middle of the night, blowing my nose, was going through washcloth after washcloth after washcloth, hawking up loogies, spitting in the sink, spitting everywhere, because wherever I was at, I had to spit. I couldn't swallow it. I had to spit. Okay? So eventually you're going to have to deal with the COVID-19 in its environment, and your body has to be able to adapt to it. And it means that, yes, you're going to be coughing. And some people physically cannot deal with evolution because it is so painful, and they don't realize that they'll survive it. They just have to keep eating to rebuild the cells so their body can now finally have the muscles and the substance to get out the stuff that doesn't belong when they get exposed again. But remember, the system has atrophied your ability to expel, and so you're relying on their tubes and their vacuums and all of their operations. And then you see people they don't evolve. They're really mean. Oh yeah, I see people who are deteriorating, like seriously deteriorating, are become very mean and narrow. That's why it's very difficult to stay friends with people who are deteriorating. That it was already challenging to be their friend before they were deteriorating, and then now they're deteriorating. There's no way I could be friends with certain people, because their outlook is completely different. Like completely different. And so that's why the JJ mentality is that you stay on it, you shed your world of people that are really not serving you, keep certain people close enough so that you feel it can be your support system until you feel autonomous enough, because you don't want somebody drilling holes in your boat. You want to have relative support system until you can stand on your own 2 feet. And that's the whole transition of the JJ mentality, biophysically as well as economically, and then your place in this world. Because I'm telling you, It's not going to be easy if you keep putting this suffering off. So if you guys are still doing J juice and you know you've already gone through so many waterfalls and now you're thinking you're home free because you don't feel the COVID or any of its variants, you do not get it. You won't get it. And so those are using Jilly Juice as a crutch. Maybe it's time to get off it and start experiencing the world that you live in, not under the haze of a cure. Because yes, salt is a powerful cure, but it also will take away substance and you will go to absolute zero. Because then you will adhere to the third law of thermodynamics of entropy. Anything in a cured state in a dynamic environment will eventually make its way to absolute zero. And so I understand suffering, but learn how to channel that suffering into something beneficial in the way you write, the way you speak, what you focus your mind on. So that way you're not reinforcing the old programming while you're suffering. That you channel your energy into bettering yourself. So whatever energy is coming out of your body and you feel the pain and you feel anxious and you want to go and lash out at someone, then you go and write something that's poetic, if that's the only way you can channel at this point, until you're able to articulate what the hell is going on with you, if you even want to articulate that. That's why journaling is so important. That's why the Jilly Juice app eventually will come to fruition, and that can be a place where you can start recording everything, or you have your own paper journals and you can record stuff that way. But you need to record your journey, because you will be very surprised in where you were last year versus where you are going to be in 10 years from now if you stay on the mentality. Because I'll tell you, it's going to be like, whoa, like night and day. All right, I'm going to go, but you have to understand the foundation of suffering is the extreme desire to belong at the expense of your body, mind, and spirit, and even sacrificing yourself, even cannibalizing the people around you. And that's why nobody in 2018 that I was around is around me today, because of their extreme desire to belong. All right, have a good day. Bye.